And welcome to tonight's show, and I love the comment of waiting at Willy Wonka to arrive. Unfortunately, Willy Wonka won't be coming on tonight's show, Kiwi Scoop, but hey, love the promise of going through there for our end-of-year show, and like to sit there and say thank you, Laura, for joining us again, and
hey,
Stacey, thanks for turning on the camera.
For once. Willingly.
Yes. I'll be Willy Wonka for Kiwi Skirt.
Good on you.
Yes. Was it now? Would you be the Gene Wilder version, or would you be the Johnny Depp version?
Oh, Gene Wilder all the way. No, I don't know what Johnny Depp was doing. You know me, I'm quirky. I like Gene Wilder. He's right up my alley.
Yeah. It feels like it feels a bit more realistic to reality, whereas the Johnny Depp one just kind of feels a bit like, what do you call it? It's like so make believe it's not funny.
I think the best Willy Wonka was the one that played that role during that failed one-day event in England.
Oh.
That's the best Willy Wonka in my opinion. What is that behind the mirror?
Person.
Yeah. Now, for those who are wondering, we will be doing something different tonight because, well, we can, and following what other shows have done. After 9:30 tonight, we will let people. You can click on the restream link and ring into the show and appear on the screen like we are right now. So if you'd like to have 2 minutes later towards the end of the show what you'd like to see political change for 2025, let's sit there and do that. Now, before we get to the nitty-gritty stuff, got to eat our vegetables with a vote of no confidence. Or an attempt for a vote of no confidence, I think will be the better words. So let's kick it off.
Point of order, the Honourable Kieran McInerney.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. I seek leave to move members' notice of motion number 5 in my name, a motion of no confidence in the Speaker.
Right on. It's a point of order in place. Leave of sought. Is there any objection? Yes. There appears to be objection.
So, how are those vegetables that you had to eat?
Oh, yummy. Can I have some more, please?
But I thought that would be a bit of a good start before we get on to the fun part.
Fair.
Yeah, so basically the opposition's doing what they did, like what Chris Bishop did last time when Trevor Mallard was Speaker, and put a vote of no confidence in the Speaker. So, should we get off to the fast track bill?
Probably.
And you might notice something a little bit different in the minister who's speaking. Let's kick it off.
The Honourable Shane Jones.
I present a legislative statement on the fast track approvals bill.
That legislative statement is published on the authority of the House, can be found on the Parliament website.
I move
Shane
that the fast track approvals
Guys,
bill
we're fast
be now
tracking
read
your speech.
a third time. Sir, this is a speech that I will give with a level of seriousness because of the critical importance to the New Zealand public, to the affairs of this House, that this piece of legislation represents. This piece of legislation is built on an innovation that the Honourable David Parker introduced during COVID into this House to fast-track the consideration of proposals dedicated to boosting New Zealand's resilience. Our party, whilst in political wilderness for 3 years, did a great deal of work as to how David Parker's efforts could be improved. With that recipe, we came forward, sir, and formed a government. And that government was formed with the party led by the Prime Minister and the ACT Party. And a key feature of what our party negotiated, sir, was the inclusion into a parliamentary body of work called the Fast Track Bill. In some respects, sir, it ought to have been called the One-Stop Shop Bill, because the most important development contained in this bill is the attempt that it makes to conflate multiple consents into a singular process so that those New Zealand investors, those investors who are coming from overseas to join us in our efforts to boost not only our wealth but our resilience, can have confidence that there will be an outcome within a short and reasonable period of time. So we now have arguably the most permissive regime to effect growth and development in Australasia. And perhaps for some people in this Parliament, no higher praise could be recited other than the fact that President Trump in America himself has now promised to deliver a fast-track bill if you are willing to spend $1 billion and turn around the greatest capitalist economy in the world. High praise that I will bank myself. I will now continue to acknowledge that a great deal of work was undertaken by the civil service. The Select Committee put in a sterling effort. The people that submitted to the bill, they supported their democratic entitlements to make applications, to have through the submission process the bill change, and changed it was, Mr. Speaker, against what I campaigned for. The authority under this bill for applications to gain consents, to develop our resources, to build roads, to deliver energy, will be made by an independent panel. An independent panel that I'm hopeful will have the quality of people that the independent assessment panel chaired by a well-known lawyer, David Tapsell, undertook the analysis to deliver us the 149 projects, Mr. Speaker, that are in the schedule. And it was a very bleak day that in a tawdry attempt to capture public attention, members on the other side of the House sought to stigmatise, demonise and spread a whole host of mythology about applicants, including those who are going to improve the housing outcomes for New Zealand. So on behalf of the sentient, respectful members of this House, I want to apologise to the people associated with projects on that list, including the Winton Company, that they were dragged through muck, they were misrepresented, and they were subject to a host of demonising remarks that the people who made those remarks will never mention such things out of the House. Of course, one of the problems with this bill, it's attracted a great deal of dangerous rhetoric from the other side of the House. In fact, applicants on the schedule within this bill are now receiving letters from the Māori Party, and the Māori Party is promising to strip any applicant of their resource rights, consent rights that they may achieve under this bill. So now we have the Venezuelan example here in New Zealand that if you gain a legal statutory consent, then you're going to be stripped of it in the event that the Māori Party forms part of an alternative government. I can assure you they have nothing to worry about, because the Māori Party won't be here at the next election. If the SFO doesn't drive them out, the people who voted for them in will turn their backs on them, because this bill actually embeds genuine statutory engagement and participation rights for Māori. And of course, we will enrich our nation through the minerals sector. And the minerals sector is about to get a great boost off the coast of Taranaki as a consequence of this bill, where people will have a statutory entitlement to apply for a resource consent, something that has been denied them through mythology, cultural fabrications, but science.
Can I just Ms. Narewa-Packer, there's a difference between interjections and a continual commentary, and you're certainly erring on the latter at the moment. So could you just tone it down a little bit, please?
Sir, there's a line out of the Bible. Forgive them, they don't know what they do. So as I was saying,
there's a line out of the Bible that don't comment on what comes from the chair, or some equivalent of, so just carry on, Mr. Jones.
Yes, far for me to give you deified status, but I will take on board what you've just said. So what have I covered off? I've covered off that this is pro-development, this is pro-growth. And why are we doing it? We're doing it because the country needs an economic boost. It will achieve economic surplus, jobs that will attract New Zealanders back to the land of the long white cloud, certainty for investors, and where there are opportunities for people to participate, it will be limited to those who actually need to participate. Those who in the past have weaponised environmental law sought to use it for irrelevant purposes such as creating Indigenous sovereignty movements inversely related to the well-being of New Zealanders or our economy. They will be ruled completely out of court They will be marginalised because their contribution, sir, will not enrich the country. Now, on the question of where to from here, shortly, the apparatus will be in place for the fast-track bill to be operationalised. And as we go forward over the next 12 to 15 months, where there may be examples that in the operationalisation, this majestic piece of legislation needs further refinement, those opportunities will be seized. But they'll be driven by people who are investing their own time, their own money, and they have a desire to create wealth and an upgrade of the quality of life in New Zealand throughout the four winds. I look forward to massive growth in the mining sector. In fact, it was only on Friday that an additional $700 million is being invested into the mining sector on the strength of this bill and naturally the quality of the mining minister's advocacy. But humility requires me not to say much more about that. We'll also see water storage. We'll see the projects that have been hobbled, undermined and marginalised through factors that don't belong in resource management law. Sadly, that side of the House has sought to elevate factors that are inversely related to economic growth and economic development. We are going to see the expansion not only of irrigation and water, because unlike what blighted Hawke's Bay water development options, this bill gives a level of certainty because decisions will be made on the basis of economic rationalism, scientific certainty, and not fabricating tikanga Māori that lessens the status of Māori culture because it becomes weaponised and the part of ideology that is actually alien and foreign to all Kiwis who want to create an opportunity to boost the economy. The economic boost is coming through fast track.
The question is that the motion be agreed to.
I want to start a Greg O'Connor fan club. He's been my favourite speaker so far. But Shane Jones just makes this too easy for me. I chose the right hat for tonight. But anyways, he made a weird comment about Trump and fast tracking, but he doesn't state which bill is associated with or has been announced by the Trump administration that can be compared to the fast track approvals bill. He's better off comparing this bill to what Biden did. Now, about the seabed. The seabed deposits that have generated the most interest in New Zealand are the polymetallic. Well, someone's phone's going wild.
Oh, yes, it's mine. It's great.
Oh, okay.
Turn the sound off, man.
Damn, I was in the middle of my monologue. Okay, the seabed. I'll do a Shane Jones. The seabed deposits that have generated the most interest in New Zealand are the polymetallic manganese nodules, which contain significant reserves of manganese, iron, and cobalt. Cobalt reduced significantly in value due to oversupply, not the woke Maoris, in the market and advancements in battery technology. Lithium iron phosphate, which reduces the need for nickel and cobalt. There you go, and that's your Shane Jones impersonation for tonight. I might have to change my name to Shane Jones.
Nickel. You said nickel.
Nickelback.
I will not say what I think I heard, but I'm pretty sure the audience will know what I think I heard.
Nicola Willis?
Nickel.
Nicola Willis, no votes?
No.
Oh. No, I'm not going to entertain that idea.
No, Laura's got it. Laura knows what happened there.
I might have to change my username to Nickel.
So we finished. We've had a good Shane Jones impersonation. Now, do you think you can pull off Rachel Brooking?
Sorry, what was that?
Do you think you can pull off Rachel Brooking, the next speaker?
I don't know. I have to hear her voice. I don't watch the videos. I read the transcript. So let's go for it. Let's see if I can do it.
Okay.
All right.
Serious speech about a very serious topic, about the statement that the government members make over and over again that this bill was based on David Parker's fast track. And why I want to do that is to make the point to disagree with something that the government members have been suggesting, that the Labour Party is anti-development and anti-housing. That is quite wrong. We are neither of those things. We had a Spatial Planning Act, a Natural and Built Environments Act that included a fast track that will remain on the books for some time. So there is no need for this fast track bill that totally overrides all of our environmental protections. And that is a key component, a key difference that I'm going to talk about some more in a minute. You could argue that, as the Minister just said, he said that this bill should have been called the one-stop shop bill. And that is a significant difference from David Parker's fast-track bills. That is not the aspect of this bill that we have been so deeply opposed to. What we are deeply opposed to in the Labour Party is the overriding of our environmental protections for a select few that have got their names on a list. And it's a disgrace. So we have seen a terrible process with this bill. Yes, the bill did go to the Select Committee for 6 months, which is unusual for this government. But then we came back, we reported back, and we didn't have that list of 149 projects, Mr Chair. The Select Committee had never seen that. We came back, and on the afternoon that we were starting the committee debate on this bill, the debate where we get to ask serious questions and have, hopefully, useful commentary on the Hansard from the ministers, that was the day that we saw a giant amendment, a government amendment on the bill. Many of the issues included in that giant amendment were never traversed by the ministers in the chair. There were some specific questions that were answered, many specific questions were not, and there was no general statements on those changes. And then, Mr. Speaker, when we were debating in the committee stage of the bill, the minister had to put up a number of other amendments during the committee stages debate, because that amendment paper in the minister's name was big and significant, and there had not been enough rigour applied to it. And that just goes to show what nincompoops this government is. There is no social licence for the projects included in this bill, which means that there is no certainty for them. And why there is no social licence is, we've just heard the minister say, people, members of the community, environmental groups, neighbours that aren't adjoining, iwi groups that don't have treaty settlements, they have no input into these processes. So there's that problem. Then we know that the purpose of the bill doesn't refer to the environment or terms like sustainable management, despite all advice going to the minister saying that that should be included. And I've just heard from the minister how he was being modest, something about being modest in the mineral sector. Well, I was reminded the other night that Stratera, the advocacy group for the mineral sector, they submitted that they wanted an environmental clause included in that purpose of the bill. They don't want this bill to override all of our environmental protections, because they know when they go to the international investors and the like and try and show that they have adhered to good environmental regulations, that it will be impossible to do that under the fast track. In that form, of course. They did also apply to be on that list of 149, which in my view is problematic. Now, because there is no social licence, because these projects are just going across because the ministers agreed for them to be on the list, some of those projects will have large environmental effects and really muck up the livelihoods of those around them. Not all of the projects, of course. This is a cynical government that makes sure that it puts projects on the list that they know will be popular. Some housing projects, some renewable energy projects. But then there's a coal mine in the Kiwi habitat and housing on floodplains, and who knows what else will come to pass, because of course new projects can be added. So there will be protests, and that will lead to uncertainty, and my advice to applicants is not to use this process. And then of course we know, we've had the debates, we had the Clark rule, and the chair, the speaker, overturn him, that those 149 projects listed in this bill are getting a private benefit. And the minister, one of the ministers may say, well, they're not getting consent, they can be declined. That is true, they can be declined. But it's very unlikely that they will be declined once they're on this list, because of how the bill is written. And that is that the primary focus of decision makers has to be on that purpose, which is to facilitate the projects. And, Mr. Speaker, these applications can be for things that are prohibited under the Resource Management Act, which means that it is not possible to get a resource consent. So you can go, not you, Mr. Speaker, an applicant can go from not being able to even get a consent because something is prohibited to being able to get a consent. And that is a private gain, and that is why these projects should have been included on private bills, not in this government piece of legislation. And Mr. Speaker, we've heard a lot about the zombie projects, those projects that have already been declined. And the minister might say, well, they can submit different proposals where the environmental effects have been modified. And Mr. Speaker, I put up an amendment so that that could be the case. But like all my other amendments, of course the government voted against it. And then, since we were in committee stage last week, we have had the delivery of some of the information about those applications for the 149 listed projects. And we can see from those that there is no change from what was applied for and what was declined in the past. So that is a very real private benefit to those companies on that list. Those companies that have already been declined consent could not go ahead with their projects. Now they have the opportunity to do that, and it's highly likely that they will proceed in some form or other. And that is a disgrace. It's a disgrace to our public law system that donors to the government can get themselves onto a list. And hopefully everybody can realise why that is dangerous, why it is that we have these conventions, that government bills, they can specify different groups of people, but not individuals and not individual companies. So it is a disgrace. We, of course, I'll talk about this in the next bill as well, we've made bipartisan offers to talk with the government and they come to nothing. This is an extremely radical law. It's good that the ministerial decision-making was changed, and I thank those people who protested against the fast-track bill when it was in that form. But this is still radical law. This is still law that changes our constitutional arrangements. It's bad for New Zealand's reputation. It's bad for democracy. It creates uncertainty. Any future government that might look to review these consents that are granted that are going to harm the environment, it's not on them, it's on this government for producing such a horrendous act that goes against so many of New Zealand's norms of fairness and the same rules applying to everyone.
You want me to copy her voice?
I don't know
sure?
how good you can be.
I mean, I can give it a crack. The Natural and Built Environment Act of 2023, NBEA, and the Fast Tracks Approval Bill have a number of differences. The NBEA sought to protect and restore the environment while enabling development, whereas the Fast Track Bill aims to speed up development projects with regional or national benefits. The NBEA also involved regional planning committees with community input, whereas the Fast Track Bill was originally going to allow ministers to have the final say on projects. This was changed after the submission process to granting final decision-making to the expert panel, in line with the previous government's Fast Track process. There you go. Please don't hate me, Rachel. I was asked to do it.
Not bad, not bad. I think we got the tone of her voice. You got the tone of the voice right.
Okay. Don't get me to do David Seymour, please.
No. Why would we want to subject ourselves to that twice?
Yeah, thank goodness. But it does mention the fact that they spent 1.5 urgency days, I'll make that clear, urgency days on Community House on that one bill.
Yep.
Yeah, so should we head off to Lan Pham?
Yes, let's go to Lan.
Heart and disappointment and genuine dismay that I speak here today on this complete abomination of a fast-track bill, bulldozing its final way through Parliament. And my dismay is ultimately because it sets up this new legal framework that specifically and very definitively creates this process where private profit of the few can so brazenly trump our people and to tie our environment. It was summed up really eloquently by the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment in their submission on the Fast Track Bill. And they described it as having one set of rules for everyone and then another set through Fast Track for, quote, the big end of town. So it feels genuinely like this government is in some sort of alternate universe to be here in 2024 when all the weight of science, of research, of evidence, of mātauranga, our literal ways of knowing, tell us that we're in trouble. It tells us that our environment is in trouble and we can't keep taking it for granted and exploiting it. And yet, this government is here today passing this destructive fast-track bill. How can it be that they have the access to every piece of information and evidence and experience in our communities and in this building and yet understand so very little? Mr. Speaker, it's been really clear from the start that the public didn't want and still don't want this bill. Only 0.6% of submitters actually supported this bill, and over 27,000 people actually submitted, and almost 55,000 if we include petitions. We've had so many voices across the country saying they don't want these projects, some of which have already been declined by the courts because of their significant harm to either communities or the environment. And I just wanted to elevate a snapshot of just a few of those voices and their very accurate descriptions of the bill. So the first one, quote, it prioritises corporate interests over environmental and human protection. Too right, it does. And yet somehow the Select Committee actually strengthened, not weakened, this aspect in directing that decisions are made with giving the greatest weight in the bill to the purpose of development at all costs, now being made a reality today. And here's another submitter. It dismantles decades of environmental safeguards, posing a grave risk to both people and the economy. Again, completely accurate in that this is a bill that relegates what we did once consider, our already pitiful state of environmental protections are now relegated to mere considerations under this bill and directed to be overridden by development. It's an unexpected and unwanted Merry Christmas to Aotearoa, where what were our environmental protections are now virtually non-existent. You could describe them as a threatened species on the verge of extinction, and that is unacceptable in 2024. Even in Committee of the Whole, the Minister wouldn't address the question of where do environmental outcomes actually sit in this bill. And there's no answer to that because no one wants to be put on the record in 2024 to admit that the environment is actually at the bottom. Te Tai Kaha Māori Collective, among so many others who submitted, brought up that this bill's regard for Te Tiriti when they said, development can be done sustainably and sound environmental management is good for economic development. The bill just does not provide a framework to strike the right balance. It disproportionately prioritises development over Te Tai Ao. And again, they're spot on. This bill violates Māori rights and Te Tiriti in failing to provide for the unique role of tangata whenua as kaitiaki. It completely fails to safeguard their ability to meaningfully and substantively engage in the exercise of tino rangatiratanga and mana whakahaere in their rohi. Mr. Speaker, it's really hard to gauge from the Select Committee process and in this chamber who from the government side is actually listening or paying attention. Because I keep thinking, Mr. Speaker, if they knew what was really in this bill, if they knew the places and communities that would be put at serious risk by these projects, they would not be passing this bill. And I wanted to touch really briefly on two of these projects just to highlight why. Now, the first glaring example is the Waimate Waste Incineration Plant. It's a disaster waiting to happen in terms of highlighting how serious these impacts on people in Te Tai Ao are. These plants overseas, where they've been in operation for a number of years, have been proven to be so harmful to people and the environment that a number of countries, particularly across the EU, are now decommissioning or banning them. Fonterra actually opposed a similar plant being proposed in Te Awamutu due to staff welfare concerns. The council don't want it, Waihao Runaka don't want it, the school doesn't want it, the local GP doesn't want it, the neighbouring farmers don't want it, and yet under Fast Track, here is a pathway to allow this project to happen. We've got the Bendigo Ophir open cast gold mine by Santana, and this breaches the district plan, the outstanding landscape provisions in the district plan. It crosses numerous conservation covenants. It threatens not only the water supply, but the burgeoning wine industry that has taken hold not only in the valley, but the wider Central Otago region. It's all at stake. It's all up for sale when we allow these pathways for private companies to benefit and override the good and well-being of everyone else. Now, in both of these cases, the local council and mayor have made clear that they don't want these projects in the areas. How can this government go on trumpeting about localism and then pass this bill that so comprehensively discards the wishes of community and their democratic rights in forming their district and regional plans? I am still yet to hear any rationale about why prohibited activities should still be eligible for approval under this bill. Mr. Speaker, this is the level of recklessness in this bill. It's been unprecedented in the way it's actually threatened the integrity of this parliament and going against the advice of the clerks and the majority of our speakers in this House. We want to make it really clear when it comes to Te Pāti Kakariki that we will not let this happen. We want every company and every individual and every shareholder to know that, yes, this process is risky. It risks all of our environment. It risks all of our local voice. And we believe companies and shareholders that try to get approvals under this bill should bear that risk, not our communities. So we absolutely commit to reviewing and potentially revoking every consent rammed through under this fast-track bill. Because if these companies want to come and give so little disregard to Titiriti, to our democratic process and our environmental protections, then there is no security for them in that, and they have no future here in Aotearoa, and we make absolutely no apology for that. Fast-track deserves to be consigned to the ashes of history, and Te Pāti Kakariki oppose it every single step of the way.
I do find it quite interesting. The fact that was brought up was the fact it's overriding local council's district plans.
Yes.
That was quite intriguing because that's basically going, screw you, community. Wellington knows better.
Well, yeah.
Except in the case of Wellington, Pakadanga knows better.
Yeah. I mean, it's like with the expert panels, they're not required to consult communities in terms of how infrastructure is going to impact them. But it would be really interesting to find out how many companies that have applied for fast-track approval are New Zealand owned and operated, and how many of which have ties to overseas companies and shareholders. I really like the fact that Lon highlighted the importance of co-governance, shared decision-making. It's important that Māori, Pākehā and Taiiwi get to have a say on how infrastructure projects will impact them, especially on a local level. So, effectively, fast-track has taken that away from them. And that's not good.
Yeah. You've been quiet, Stacey.
A lot of this bill just makes me angry.
Fair enough. It's all right. We've got, let's kick over, because we've got to be seen as fair and balanced here, for a seat warmers compilation.
Nice. I like warm seats.
Growing productivity in this country is an important part of what this government is trying to achieve so that we can get our country in a state of affairs economically where we can afford to pay for the nicer hats. We also want to be able to build stuff. And after the nincompoops on the other side created an obstruction economy, it's getting ever harder to do that. We spend, according to the Infrastructure Commission, over $1.3 billion a year on consenting. That is a sunk cost, Mr. Speaker, that we cannot afford in a housing crisis, in a massive infrastructure deficit, and in a country where we are signing up to ambitious climate change targets. Mr. Speaker, this bill will be a one-stop shop to bring 10 acts of Parliament into one to make it easier to consent, and I commend it to the House.
Just before we take the next speaker, I'd like to remember there isn't a list of terms you can use to call the opposition, but I just wonder whether it reflects well on him some of the terms that he does use. But I'll leave that with him. No, it's just an observation, but I'll leave it to him to reflect on that himself.
Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a great bill, and this will get our infrastructure and our economy back on track. I'm thrilled to commend it to the House.
And the reason why we call that a seat warmers compilation is because they literally weren't worth. They were so short that it wasn't, what else could we sit there and say? And
it was so short that their seats were still warm when they sat back down again.
The seats are on fire. But the thing is that he got started, potentially making a good point, and then he sat back down again. So, yeah, let's talk about...
Now we're talking about Michael, we're talking about Cameron.
I'm talking about the nincompoop Cameron. For once, he actually made a good point. I don't know if he fell into it accidentally, but yes, research has shown that the increase in consenting complexity and costs are due to councils considering a wider range of potential impacts from infrastructure projects. And 2, councils are requiring more evidence about those impacts. And 3, communities have less tolerance of impacts. And this is especially true in regards to marine and coastal activities. So you need big money for that. when taking this into account and looking at which projects have received approval under the fast track bill, large projects who spend less than small projects on consenting costs have benefited the most. Infrastructure projects costing under 200,000 spend on average 15.9% of their budget on consenting, compared to 0.7% for projects costing more or costing between 100 million and 1 billion. So this bill, the fast track bill, doesn't favour the little guys; it favours the big guys. So it's like, oh, okay, Cameron, I'll finish your thought for you. How about this? I'll wokeify it a bit, so we can highlight the small guys are getting screwed and the big guys are winning all the W's.
Yeah, no, nothing that this current government is doing is to help the little guys. It's all to help their mates get bigger, deeper pockets, and that's it.
Yep.
Okay, let's hear from Debbie Ngariwa-Paka.
And this is what we need to remind ourselves, is that that type of behaviour is felt out very strongly in the communities that I represent and move along. Because the fast track bill, no matter how you want to call it, I heard the minister say, oh, we should call it the one-stop shop. Oh, hell no. This is what we would call the ram raid bill. It's a ram raid bill. It's going to bulldoze itself through our environments, bulldoze through the communities, bulldoze over those who passionately don't want to see things happen in their communities, but the government has chosen to ignore them, using the terminology of economic development. Do not insult our intelligence. Do not insult those communities that live there and know their communities better than you ever will, or the government ever will, that this is what this bill is about. It is a shortcut. And that's the concerns that we can see out in the community, that there's a shortcut. It gives no effect to our role and our rights as tangata whenua, mana whenua. It gives no effect to te tiriti. It gives no effect to those who are here intergenerationally looking after our communities. And in fact, what we've seen unleashed is scathing attacks from the very minister that started the cordial today. Pixie like hapu. We're going to milk Mother Earth of everything she has. The arrogance that has come out of this government and thinking that there will be no consequences. Someone, I think there's another terminology, and it's not lost on any of us, is excessive wokeness. Well, isn't that interesting? Because there was never any excessive wokeness when we saw quarry connections to the ministers and donors. Because that is what this is. It is not lost on us what this is about. It's not lost on us that this has been directed by very, very clear those who actually have an atlas to be able to show their way forward in Aotearoa's economy. Because the atlas has shown everyone really what it is that's at stake here. The arrogance in this bill has been unprecedented. The flaws, and we've seen this. I want to really talk about a couple of the other projects because I'm not here with a full 10 minutes like those who actually only spoke for a minute. What we have here is a government that has allowed to bring back to life, to resurrect, to bring zombie projects back that courts in every court in Aotearoa had told were not good enough. Their practices were not good enough. They could not meet the threshold that we require in our highest environmental threshold. And again, I'm talking about Trans-Tasman Resources, who promised to bring $1 billion to Aotearoa's economy. And in fact, their promises were so bad, they had to do a formal retraction to the Australian Stock Exchange. What the heck is that economic strategy? Four judges agreed on New Zealand's legal obligation in this threshold, not only to Te Tiriti, to the international ocean law, but what we have here is a government that's ignored. They do not care that we're allowing seabed mining into our oceans. They do not care that the rest of the world are sitting there shunning seabed mining. They do not care that no one in the communities, including their own voters, including those who voted for the general seats in Wanganui, who have been sitting there making that MP know very strongly what they think about it. We've got ministers with no experience prepared to gamble the safety of our ocean with experimental sector that failed to meet any environmental thresholds. Again, I repeat, not just in one court, not in two courts, not in three courts, in four courts. And we're being expected to believe this government's whole agenda is economic development. Rubbish. What we have here, sadly, and I'm going to say this again, when we had a minister say only a small group in Taranaki are against Trans-Tasman Resources seabed mining, that could not be more further from the truth. But that is the arrogance that has been fabricated, that we're all prepared to have to listen to. This whole analogy of economic anemia. Economic anemia, well, what we've seen is bloated greed. Bloated greed at the expense of our environments and bloated greed at the expense of our communities, who they will never ever bother to go and see. And I think what we've got to remember is that the saddest part about this bill, it's the darkest part about this bill, is that there is absolutely no accountability to the 83% who voted against it, to the communities in Taranaki that through their own hard efforts funded numerous courts, right up until the Supreme Court, who ruled against Trans-Tasman Resources' ability to be able to safely mine. They ruled, in effect, for the rule of caution for all generations of Aotearoa. This bill is a shameful disgrace and a slight on this government, unsurprisingly.
Jeez. I have a lot to say about Trans-Tasman Resources Limited, so I don't know if you guys want to strap one in, but this might take a little while. So what is Trans-Tasman Resources Limited? Well, they're an Australian company that have been involved in court proceedings in New Zealand related to proposed seabed mining off of Taranaki. Recently in October, like what Debbie was talking about, they retracted claims that the project will generate about 1 billion export earnings annually. Instead, what they did, guys, they changed it to stating they want the ability to contribute 1 billion annually. That's a quote. In their proposal to the EPA in 2016, TTRL, that's Trans-Tasman Resources Limited for short, they wanted to extract up to 50 million tonnes of seabed and subsoil material per year, targeting the recovering of iron sand, which makes up about 10% of volume, with the remaining 45 million tonnes being redeposited on the seabed within the previously excavated area. And we aren't talking about just gently scraping the surface with a little comb. They want to excavate up to 11 metres below the existing seabed. That's a lot of sand. It's also a lot of habitat removal and sediment plumes and noise pollution. So the Taranaki Bight, as it's called, is home to blue-cod tarakihi and snapper, and TTRL has successfully applied to expand the permitted area for seabed mining from 6.6 to 24.3 kilometres squared. So that's about 1/3 of the area of the Bight. And this area is almost the same size as Great Barrier Island. That is huge. Massive. And that's the end of my speech.
I'll just unbuckle my seatbelt now. Okay. Shall we see another seat warmer speech followed by a decent speech?
All right.
Okay. I think you're right who the seat warmer is.
Mr. Speaker, I stand in support of the Fast Track's Approvals Bill, a bill which says yes to jobs, yes to opportunities, yes to energy security, yes to building the roads that are needed to unlock economic growth and opportunity, yes to houses, yes to making sure that this country can actually deliver the opportunities which keep our children here in New Zealand. Mr. Speaker, on the other side of the House we see the people who say no, no, no to all of those things, and the people of New Zealand will say no to them at the 2026 election.
So, just to let you know, I think we found our first Minister seat warmer.
Minister of seat warming.
Yes. Yes, but we might have an associate very soon. So let's get off to David Parker, and then we'll follow by Chris Bishop.
Yes.
All right.
This fast-track legislation behind the merits of the earlier versions. Mr. Speaker, we've had two prior versions of fast-track. The first was the COVID response fast-track, and the second was embedded on a permanent basis through the Natural and Built Environments Act, which repealed the RMA and carried fast-track forever. But there are major differences between those forms of fast-track and this one that is in this legislation, and some members have already covered it, but I'm going to reiterate what I think are the important differences. Mr. Speaker, the opposition parties, including the Labor Party, have long acknowledged that there is a problem with excessive costs for consenting mid-size infrastructure particularly. Not so much the larger infrastructure, but the mid-size and smaller infrastructure projects in New Zealand. The cost and delay of consenting has been excessive, and we in government proved it through the Infrastructure Commission that we set up, and we remedied it, Mr. Simeon Brown, through the legislation that we passed. 90%, more than 90% of the projects that went through that fast track were eventually consented. Less than 10% were declined, and they were declined for good reasons. Mr. Speaker, that was achieved by focusing on the speed of the process, not by overriding the laws which govern the balance between development and environmental harm. Mr. Speaker, there was no need to override the Resource Management Act. We, in our version of fast track, consented wind farms, solar farms, the biggest solar farms ever to be built in New Zealand, consented under our fast track. We consented roads. We consented geothermal. In the next version, renewals of hydro were also able to be fast-tracked, but not new hydro projects, which forever alter the environment of a river system that is dammed and inundated. Mr. Speaker, we consented whole new towns. We consented thousands of building opportunities, high-rise, some new subdivisions. We consented factories. I think Mr. Simeon Brown, he'll also be aware that we consented roads. Not once did we have to override the Conservation Act, or the Wildlife Act, or the Resource Management Act, or the Historic Places legislation, all of which are necessary. Now, the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment, Simon Upton, a former National Party Minister for the Environment, has held the highest ever office of a New Zealander in an environmental role overseas, and that he was head of the OECD Environment Division, came to the Select Committee and said, this legislation is worse than the National Development Act. 1979, I think it was, passed by Muldoon and removed by the following Labor government because it went too far. But he said that legislation had more checks and balances than this, because that legislation meant that you had, for a large project, a thorough process that people could participate in. The contentious issues could be critiqued, they could be worked through, and a consent was either approved or at the end of it declined. Under this legislation, there is no environmental test to speak of, because the rules in the Conservation Act can be overridden, and the Wildlife Act, and the Historic Places Tract legislation, and the Resource Management Act. And that means that the environmental outcomes can be worse. Now, what does this mean in practice? We've heard from other members that it means that things that couldn't be consented under the old regime now will be. And what are they?
They are things that will make New Zealand worse place to be in. They will extend the life and extent of coal mines. Does many people in this House think that's a good idea, that you should fast-track more greenhouse gas emissions? The outgoing chair of the emissions agency, Rod Carr, said digging up more fossil fuels is a crime against humanity. That's pretty strong words from the leader of our response on climate change, and he was right. And that's what this bill does. It enables more fossil fuel extraction. I know, while we hear Simeon Brown, look, he's even worse on energy than he is on roads. This is the man that would double New Zealand's electricity price by importing LNG. That was his response to a dry year this year. A complete overreaction, just like we had with Nicola Willis on the ferries. Head in the sand as to what are the long-term solutions to energy challenges, which involve backing up our intermittent renewables in a dry year. They do not involve importing LNG, which would double the price of electricity in a dry year. Now, he's learned that since, because he shut up on that particular dumb idea that he took to the country just months ago, because he was so embarrassed when he actually saw the advice as to what would be the effect on electricity prices. But those sorts of projects, dumb though they are, could be fast-tracked under this legislation. What else can be overridden? Do you know we haven't got many rivers protected in New Zealand under water conservation orders, but every one of those water conservation orders is at risk now under this government, because they would give themselves the right to override a water conservation order protecting an outstanding river, and they have to be an outstanding river to be protected in that way. What's going to happen to some of the council costs? Under our fast track, we didn't override a plan. If a plan said you shouldn't subdivide in that particular area, you had to go through a plan change. You couldn't override it through a consent with the approval of a minister saying, oh, we know better, we're going to force those infrastructure costs upon a council by having an out-of-order subdivision over there, even though there's no libraries and pools, and we're going to have to put in more libraries and pools, and there's not decent roads, and there's no public transport for people to use. We're going to override that, and we're going to have a subdivision over there. Quite unprincipled and wrong, Mr Speaker, and unnecessary, as we proved with our version of fast track, because plenty of subdivisional opportunities were created under that legislation. Mr Speaker, this legislation is based on a false dichotomy. It says that you cannot have environmental protection and a clean environment. It's just wrong. If you do it right, you can have both. But you don't achieve that by having a development-only test in the legislation, enabling ministers to override other legislation. You don't achieve that if the only people who can appear as of right are the people who are the applicant and the adjoining landowner. Under our legislation, Business New Zealand could appear, but so could the Environmental Defence Society. And as a consequence, important information would be put before a decision-making panel before that decision was made. None of that information can be guaranteed to be required now, and there is no environmental voice that is required by this legislation. So I think that the former Minister for the Environment, the Honourable Simon Upton, was right when he said that if you're going to have these extraordinary override powers, you should reserve it for projects that are of a public benefit. Now, I agree with Chris Bishop that not all projects with a public benefit are necessarily owned by the government or local government. I agree with that. But that's not what he was saying. He was saying that if there's a project for a public benefit, you should have these override powers on rare occasions. You do occasionally need them. Legislation already allows for them. National direction that is meant to protect the environment already has very wide exemptions for infrastructure. So you can put a road where necessary through a wetland or through an area which is a bird habitat, if that's the only place that the road can go. There are already exceptions provided for that. Similarly, in respect of other infrastructure. And if the government really thought we had a problem with being able to consent infrastructure under the existing regime, they should say projects with a public benefit as opposed to a private benefit like a private subdivision or a mine, that you should reserve it for those public infrastructure projects rather than conferring these overrides of environmental legislation to the private sector. That's what he thought. He didn't like this legislation, but he said if you're going to have those override powers, limit their application. Mr Speaker, the other thing is there are some projects that are just so big and contentious that the public will never be satisfied if there isn't a process that allows their voice to be heard. And there are sometimes contentious projects that nonetheless ought to be consented, but you'll never settle down public disquiet if you exclude the people from the process. And that's one of the things that the other fast-track thing didn't do. It didn't impose the will of government in respect of those serious issues where there should be some public process prior to decision being taken. So, Mr Speaker, this is far worse and different to the earlier versions of fast-track.
Yep.
It feels weird seeing him on fire.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a giant monologue for his speech, but he is right that his focus when he developed his fast-track bill was to incorporate community commentary on infrastructure projects. This bill, this version of fast track, has pretty much demolished that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Tigger or Tom?
Tom.
That's a big ginger boy.
Oh yeah. You know he's coming from a mile off.
Yeah, I was from.
Oh Lord, he coming.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so shall we get on to the Bish from the Hut?
Yep.
And Sir, I'd like to start by saying thank you to the vast army of officials across the public service who have moved at pace over the last year or so to pull this together. Mr Speaker, the genesis of this bill has been traversed by the Honourable Shane Jones speaking on in moving the third reading of this bill. And it comes from the desire of the New Zealand First Party to build upon the framework left by the Honourable David Parker. And I accept that he dislikes the comparison between the COVID-19 fast-track legislation. But it is true in the most obvious sense that the COVID-19 fast-track legislation is the building blocks for this legislation. It is more expensive, it is more ambitious, the tests are different, some of the machinery is different, that is true. But the framework, the architecture is similar. And New Zealand First came to us after the election and said, we've campaigned on this thing called a one-stop-shop fast-track. How do you feel about it? And the National Party in coalition negotiations signed up to that. And I was tasked as Minister for RMA Reform and Infrastructure Minister with shepherding it into law alongside my friend and colleague, the Honourable Shane Jones. It has been a Herculean task. It has been a mammoth undertaking. And a horde of officials from across the public service have worked on this. The Ministry for the Environment, the Ministry of Business Innovation and Employment, the Department of Conservation, the Infrastructure Commission, Crown Law, Ministry of Primary Industries. At one point when we were having these late evening meetings in my office, we had to go out and go to all the other offices on the 6th floor and pull together more chairs for the officials. And then it turned out there were more officials sitting on Zoom in the corner of the room overseeing everything on the TV screen. I have somewhat happy memories of those meetings. They were enjoyable meetings on one level. There's been an enormous amount of work from across the public service pulling this together. So I want to start by saying thank you. Mr. Speaker, it is trite to say, but I'll say it anyway, that we have a problem in this country with how difficult it is to do things. I actually think there's broad consensus around the Parliament across that, and that at least is progress, because for quite a long time that was denied. But I actually think there's broad consensus that it's too hard to build houses, it's too hard to build renewable energy, it's too hard to get a mine consented, it's too hard to get a quarry consented in this country. Quarries are critical to the future of construction and infrastructure. It's too hard to get roads done, it's too hard to do almost anything. So I actually think the public understand that, and that's why it's critical that over the next 2 years and beyond, we nail resource management reform. Because if you go back, the RMA 1991 has been a wrecking ball through the New Zealand economy, and you can directly trace the onset of our housing affordability crisis to the RMA 1991. It actually goes all the way back to the Town and Country Planning Act, but it was supercharged by the RMA 91. There's a lot of extensive research about this now. Overly burdensome planning regulations have driven up the cost of land and driven up the cost of housing. You can trace our infrastructure cost overruns and blowouts, which actually is occurring under this government and occurred under the last government and the government before that, to the RMA 1991 because of overly punitive conditions, overly litigious court processes, endless debate about the word avoid, endless hours and days and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars spent in court debating singular words, overly complex and elaborate tests that go all the way to the Supreme Court and beyond to just build stuff. You know, the East-West Link project, which members will have different views about, has gone all the way to the Supreme Court and beyond and is coming all the way back down again. It took 10 years to reconsent an existing geothermal power station that got built in the 1950s. No, it's only 15 years ago. It's only 15 years ago. Anyway, I'm making a point about the consensus that is now there around difficulty. Fast track is a way of cutting through this, and it is needed more than ever before, because High Food today, the half-year economic and fiscal update, revealed just how parlous the state of this country's economy is. Anemic levels of economic growth. A country that has been in recession. A country that is staring mountains and mountains of red ink in the face. And again, members will have a debate about who's responsible for that, but can we at least acknowledge the reality, which is that so much of our problems as a country could be addressed through economic growth. Better health, better education, a better standard of living, better wages, inequality. And Ms. Nariwa Packer is ranting away as she always does, but just not listening to the facts, which is that so many issues that she purports to care about could be solved through economic growth. That is the missing gap in the New Zealand economic story over the last 20 years. That is why we are 30% poorer than Australia, because for 30 years we have grown on average at a lower rate than they have, and productivity is part of that, and the RMA feeds into that. So fast track is about getting going on these projects and building a pipeline of projects. So can I deal with this public-private distinction? It was really good to hear the Honourable David Parker make a point about that. Because my argument right through the sort of ongoing debate last week about were there private benefits in this bill was that the whole debate was facile and actually ridiculous. Because we live in a mixed economy. There are public and private electricity generators, there are private deliverers of infrastructure. Many of our airports are privately owned or some combination of private and public ownership. In the case of the mixed ownership companies, they're literally listed and the government owns 51% of them. Wellington Electricity Network is privately owned, for example. People think it's owned by council, it's not. It's owned by a foreign company based out of Hong Kong from memory. So the whole debate is facile because what we are doing is recognising that infrastructure projects and projects of regional national significance, the ownership is essentially irrelevant to the question of the public benefit test. And so we are fast-tracking projects that have an ownership structure that is private. And I was really disappointed to hear the defamatory remarks of Aaron Williams during the debate on the committee stage. Remarks, I note, Mr. Speaker, that she has not been prepared to repeat outside Parliament, which I think says it all, and remarks that were grossly disorderly in the sense that she was casting about allegations that I think she will regret in time. It is true, Mr. Speaker, that there are private development projects fast-tracked through this bill, and the reason for doing so is because of the public benefits that they accrue to the country. We need more houses. Most houses in New Zealand are built by the private sector. They are not built by the government. We need more renewable energy. Some projects will be built by Meridian, but others will be built by the private sector. We need more mines in this country. Now, we used to own a state-owned coal mining company. We don't anymore. So most didn't work out that well. So most projects will be delivered by the province. We need more agriculture projects. We need more agriculture in this country. And there are a whole range of iwi projects involved in agriculture, some of which are listed in the bill. And I point out again, Mr. Speaker, as I did during the last debate, that the COVID-19 fast-track piece of legislation, most of them were public projects, but a couple of them were private projects. So we've had this debate in the past. Mr. Speaker, can I finally finish with the disgraceful comments from the Maori Party, Te Pāti Maori, essentially trying to make New Zealand into a banana republic. This idea that the Maori Party or Te Pāti Maori would, firstly, the idea that they'd ever receive ministerial warrants is frankly fanciful, and we should all make sure that day never happens, because the idea of there being a real packer running anything in this government fills me with dread. But the idea that they will get into government and cancel consents lawfully granted is frankly disgraceful, and I call upon the Labour opposition to rule out such constitutional stupidity.
Time has expired. Alina Williams.
Okay, it did feel towards the end a bit fest, but in general, he actually sat down there and took points from all the different speeches that were said earlier, rather than just go, I commend this bill to the House.
There was a lot of stretching, though, in his claims. I've been looking at reports about why we produce less in Australia. A lot of it just comes down to, low production, low labour production, low output. And that's because Australia is a much more efficient country than we are. So, yeah, and by the way, the RMA, right, it negatively impacts small projects in comparison to large projects with, again, and I've stated time and time again tonight, infrastructure projects that cost under $200,000 spend on average 15.9% of their budget on consenting, compared to projects, compared to the 0.7% of projects that cost more than 100 million and 1 billion. So if the government's serious about this, they need to support smaller startups that may not provide the large economic benefits that big infrastructure projects offer, but they still provide economic benefits to their communities. So again, like your publicly owned healthcare centres and whatnot, right? So a number of different reports have found that the government needs to invest in innovation and capital markets that support innovation, skills, so that's your education, and infrastructure, if we are to match Australia. Currently, mining contributes about 0.8% to New Zealand's GDP in comparison to manufacturing, which is at 8.2%, professional, scientific, and technical services, which is at 9.6%, and primary industry, so that's your farmers and people like me who used to work in forestry, we only counted for 5.7% of GDP in 2023. And there's a real risk, too, with these big projects, right? Look at the Tui oil field. There is a risk that the taxpayer may have to end up paying for future cleanup operations. And the Tui oil field has cost us so far $443 million to correct. That's taxpayers' money. The company's not paying for that. Taxpayer is.
Yeah.
Because they did a runner. They're like, oh, we've run out of money. We're not going to clean that up. You cleaned it up. And that's my fear when it comes to mining operations. Especially deep sea mining, it's going to cost an arm and a leg to fucking fix that, especially when you take inflation into account.
Yeah. You all right, Stacey? Or you just angry?
Yeah, basically, strip our natural resources, give it to international countries, leave nothing left for the people that live here, that rely on this country to exist. And, as Dave is saying in the comments, rob us of $16 billion worth of tourism.
Yeah.
Yep.
For them to line their pockets with. It's disgusting.
It's going to have an impact on our fishing industry, that deep sea mining.
Yeah, it's going to have an impact on our everything industry.
Yep, our wine industry with the mining as well, down the South Island. Yep, to our tourism industry. There's a lot here on the line.
Yeah.
And even worse, these aren't publicly owned infrastructure projects. The majority of them are privately owned, which means the profits are going overseas. They're not even benefiting the majority of Kiwis. It should be the other way around. We should be receiving the profits for screwing over our environment, not some overseas companies.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Now we'll get on to the next bill, the attempted, and I use the word attempted, repeal of the Good Friday and Easter Sunday as restricted trading days, shop trading and sale of sale of alcohol amendment bill first reading.
All right, this is your one. Off you go.
Yep. And I'll start off with a bit from Jerry Brownlee, who will explain how things are going to work when it comes to voting before we get to the first speech.
Have it. Call on Government Order today, number 4.
Repeal of Good Friday and Easter Sunday as restricted trading days, shop trading and sale of alcohol amendment bill, first reading.
Members, the repeal of Good Friday and Easter Sunday as restricted trading days, shop trading and sale of alcohol amendment bill will be the subject of a personal vote at the end of the debate. Is there a problem going on over there? Members are welcome to seek the call to speak in favour or against the bill. I'll aim to allocate the call as closely as possible to the proportionality of membership of the House, but also to ensure that different sides of the debate receive a fair hearing. Members may wish to come to the chair to indicate to the presiding officer that they'll be seeking a call. A call on Cameron Luxton.
Mr Speaker, I move that the repeal of Good Friday and Easter Sunday as restricted trading days, shop trading and sale of alcohol amendment bill be now read a first time. I nominate the Finance and Expenditure Committee to consider the bill. Can I first take the opportunity to thank all members from across the House who have engaged with me on this bill. Those who immediately saw this as a pro-customer, pro-worker and pro-business policy, but also those members who have brought legitimate concerns and have been part of the discussion over the last year. I hope you find that I address some of those concerns in this speech. Can I also thank Chris Bailey, who brought this bill to a previous Parliament, and the stakeholders and staff who have been getting the word out about what we are trying to do here. This bill seeks to enhance the enjoyment for all New Zealanders over the Easter weekend through a mix of simplification and choice. My bill does what it says on the tin, removes the provisions in the shop trading hours and sale of alcohol acts which restrict trading on Good Friday and Easter Sunday. There are 4 days making up our Easter weekend: Good Friday, Saturday, Easter Sunday and Easter Monday. New Zealand has 12 public holidays: secular days, Raharere Matariki, and importantly for those of us who are grateful to our heritage, Christian holidays, 2 of which fall obviously on Easter. To be clear to the House, my bill does not change a single one of these days from their position as public holidays in New Zealand. What it does to seek to change is the restrictions on how New Zealanders choose to spend these days. So I'd like to briefly traverse the lay of the land for the different days of the Easter weekend. Good Friday is a public holiday and a restricted trading day. Saturday is just a normal Saturday. Easter Sunday is not just a public holiday, but it is a restricted trading day. It is also a special day in our calendar, not just because of the Christian celebration of this day of resurrection, but in the law it is also the only day of the year where a shop employee may use their discretion and refuse to work without having to provide a reason, a discretion day. Easter Monday is a public holiday with a long history dating back to before Mondaysation. To allow for an extended Easter holiday weekend, it is not a restricted trading day. In 2016, there was a change to the rules which allowed local councils to liberalise their trading policies. This has led to a hodgepodge of confusing rules throughout the country, which every year befuddle tourists and locals alike. 4 days with 4 different sets of rules. It is no wonder that this is a perennial issue, and one which in a recent poll showed a majority of New Zealanders from all sides of this House support to see changed. Mr Speaker, I'm incredibly grateful that this bill was drawn so early in my first term. In the months since, I've been around the country, as many in this House do, to different towns, and I've heard different experiences. Some business owners have told me that even though their local area has liberalised trading policy, they find the prescribed rules so cumbersome that despite being allowed to trade, they choose to remain closed rather than attempting to comply. These rules include having to supply a substantial meal if one wishes to enjoy a beverage, the definition of which is up for debate, or restrictions on the amount of time that friends and family can spend together at a venue before being moved on. I've met restaurant and bar workers who say that despite wanting to work on restricted days, they, quote, don't like having to treat my customers like children and tell them what they can and can't eat and drink and how long they can stay before they must leave. People are just trying to enjoy their Easter. And if our alcohol laws work the other 361 and a half days of the year, why do we need a special rule on these days? I've met employees who say that because of the disjointed structure of the Easter holidays, rather than enjoying a 4-day weekend with their family, they were rostered to work on the Saturday, meaning this messes up a whole weekend for 1 day's pay, when it would be better to work the Friday or the Sunday and use a day in lieu to spend on extending other times of the year with their family in a way which is important to them. Many Kiwis have other days of the year which hold significance to them, when using a day in lieu would mean so much to them. Days like Diwali, Eid, or dates of importance to religious groups that have grown in these lands like Ringatu, Ratana or Paimarie. Retail businesses tell me they would like the opportunity of a level playing field with online realtors, because online stores don't face the restrictions that brick and mortar do, who must also pay leases and rates for their stores. Wings over Wanaka is an infamous example of a town whose rules were not aligned with the needs of the community and tourists who visited in the 2024 Warbirds over Wanaka. 2 New World supermarkets decided to open and cop the fine rather than leave the bulging tourist population unserved. Which brings me to the punishment. If a business owner was to trade on a restricted day, the law states that upon conviction, they shall be liable for up to a $2,000 fine. I've met business owners who have received this conviction and subsequent fine, but felt that it was capriciously applied just as a business just up the road was able to trade without enforcement action taken. Central government has meddled in this space. Government created a framework for local Easter trading policies, which means businesses could make their case to the council to be allowed to trade in a specific area. The law requires councils to review these policies after 5 years. Now, when I went out and asked how many councils in New Zealand have these policies, I found out that last year, 5 councils had their policy lapse without realising. This meant they allowed Easter trading in their area which was not within the law. I don't blame these councils. Central government, rather than allowing Kiwis to make their own choices, created a halfway house. Central government should take this burden off councils and say, we live in a default permissive country, and if you would like to restrict trade on your neighbours, then this is where the philosophy of localism should live. I'd like to clarify the worker protection of my bill because it is an extremely important and core part of it. As I've said, currently a worker may refuse to work on Easter Sunday. Their employer, if they would like them to work, must give written notice letting their employee know that they have the right to refuse to work, and that notice must be given no less than 4 weeks before Easter Sunday. I've asked the library, I've asked people in the industry, I've asked my fellow MPs, have there been any cases or complaints that an employee feels they have been adversely treated because of exercising their right? As yet, I have yet to hear back on any such case, so I am confident that by extending this provision, the right to refuse to work to Good Friday, we will create 2 discretion days in our calendar where all Kiwis can choose how they spend their time and in what way they would like to spend it. There are legitimate concerns about alcohol, Mr. Speaker. We know that many New Zealanders have a negative relationship with alcohol. It's been hard to find data on the following claim, but I've been told that the average sale volume of alcohol doesn't change over Easter week. The restriction on the sale of alcohol over Easter weekend means that people who feel or are dependent on alcohol may, out of a sense of nervous preparation, over-purchase and therefore have more alcohol in their homes, the most harmful place for it to be. From talking to people about my bill over the last 9 months, I've realised that there is a view which comes from a warm place in New Zealand history. One that remembers how we spent our holidays at the garden or at the beach or at the park or the lake, somewhere wholesome in nature, akin to a quarter-acre paradise vision of New Zealand. New Zealand has changed a lot in recent decades. Along with the rest of the world, the quarter-acre with a garden has become a subdivided section or a townhouse. We have seen screens become a ubiquitous part of our lives. I think the vision that if we close all shops in form of commercial entertainment, Kiwis will be seen in their gardens or in their droves at the lakeshore is not necessarily the case. It may be true for some sectors of New Zealand, but many others I fear will see more children and even adults with their faces glued to screens. Because we have changed in the way Kiwis value and spend their time, I say a restaurant, a shop, an ice cream stand, a go-kart track or a bit of mini-putt is a legitimate way to get Kiwis out and enjoying themselves. In closing, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to say that this bill does not remove anybody's rights. If you're a worker, your rights are extended. If you're a business owner, no one will be able to force you to open. If you enjoy a day off as a day off, you don't have to shop. If you want to visit a beach or a park, you can. If you want to spend your days in religious observance or attitude and by going to church, your rights is protected and enhanced. I ask my fellow members to use your conscience to vote this bill to select committee so that the views of New Zealanders can be heard. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I commend this bill to the House.
Okay, so now I've just noticed to put in there for about something that Blake's just mentioned. If you're supplying food, your business can be open on a public holiday. Domino's Pizza used to try to push their franchisees to open. When I worked at Miramar and when I worked at Newtown, those 2 franchisees were adamant no one was working Christmas. However, the person who owned the franchise for Cambridge Terrace store opened. So, and I mean, that's just one industry. Other industries do different things there. The petrol station industry, when I worked at BP, put it this way, 3 years having our Christmas lunch or dinner dictated by my work roster. So there are different things in there that does happen when it does come to things like public holidays. When it comes to the case of food, it's still open. You're still allowed to be open. Now, you can't sell alcohol unless you get a special license, and there is a process to sit there and do that. Obviously, you probably tend to get restaurants that tend to sit there and do that sort of stuff. So it is, there is a bit in there. I've traded most Easters with my business, but that's my choice. And being in the food and beverage industry, that's allowed. But there are other places where there are certain things like certain retail workers, it's the only days they're guaranteed off. Otherwise, they would be made to work. I mean, that's something that I think, Stacey, you probably remember from your Pack and Save days, that was quite like, pretty much basically, it was like, open all hours.
It sucked. I used to work at Woolworths.
Except for statutory holidays, because 75% of, I don't know if this is in general or just where I used to work, but 75% of the supermarket's profits come from selling alcohol. Therefore, there is literally no reason for them to open on a statutory holiday because they can't sell alcohol.
What about workers that want to take a day off from selling alcohol for maybe religious reasons or for cultural reasons?
That should absolutely be up to them. Like, if they don't want to, they shouldn't have to.
Yeah, but it's like you combine it with like what's happening with those partial strike deductions.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, okay, I don't care if you're religious. Fuck you. You're going to get a pay reduction.
Well, actually, that's a good point that could come up by that. There's a particular checkout supervisor at Woolworths Kilburnie who is nicknamed the liquor license Nazi. And it's because she goes above and beyond to prevent an alcohol sale. That could be misconstrued as a partial strike. I mean, put it this way. Everyone in the store knew my driver's license picture faded when she refused to serve me alcohol. Then another customer intervened, thinking she was out of line. But, that's something that is in there. I would say, and that could, her going above and beyond to sit there and stop the purchase of sale of alcohol could be seen as a partial strike. That is a point on another piece of legislation.
So it's like, I agree with the logic of the bill, but when you combine it with other bills that the ACT Party have proposed, it's like, whoa, okay, that there are potential lines that are going to be crossed here.
And I mean, the other thing is, I believe needs to be tied up is Easter Sunday. Easter Sunday is a quagmire of laws that were dated back to when we didn't have Sunday shopping. And when we had CEAs that actually gave you double time to work on Sunday, hence why the public holiday was transferred to Monday, because most people didn't work Sundays, and if you did, you got double time, which all went out the window with the Employment Contracts Act of 1993.
Yep.
Yeah.
And before we move on, for anyone who doesn't know, I've already forgotten who was speaking before, but he brought up Eid.
Yep.
Eid is centered around celebrating the end of a month of fasting and spending time with family, friends, and people within the community. So things such as Lent or Ramadan.
Yep. And actually, I went to an Eid celebration earlier this year.
Yeah.
Yes, it was quite interesting when at Morsham's place where you see grandma in the corner. Yeah, you see Moshe's mum in the kitchen cooking non-stop, and you see in one part of the room you see all the kids playing, and you see in another room you sit there and have all the suppliers of Moshe's get invited, and so you're watching all these people from the different reps of the different companies all coming in to have a was it lunch and
have a kai together.
Yeah, and you're watching, was it Moshe's mum sitting there making rotis like crazy?
I mean, it's like, okay, so go back to the bill. Again, I agree with the logic of it, but it needs to be paired with strong workers' rights. So workers should have the right to be able to refuse work on that day for cultural or religious reasons, and then find someone else to take over that role for the day.
Okay, let's get to Camilla Bellich, because she's very pro-workers' rights.
To be able to take a call on what is a conscience issue, and I do so in my capacity as the Labour Party spokesperson on workplace relations and safety, as this general bill falls into that area. And I want to start by respectfully saying to the member who brought this bill and thank him for the engagement that he's had around this bill and the passionate way he's advocated for this particular bill and the respectful way he's engaged with certainly myself, but I'm sure with other members of the House as well. It's not easy to get a member's bill drawn from the ballot, especially not one that you feel so passionately about as Cameron Luxton does. So thank you for your engagement on this. And when we did engage on it, I did indicate to Cameron Luxton that I would seriously take his advocacy into account, and I have done. Unfortunately for the member, it's not a bill that we will be supporting in this instance, and I want to take the time out of respect to go through some of the reasons why that is. I think that it's very important to see the rights that people have in New Zealand in respect of work and the time that they have with their family in the context of an existing ability to spend that time together and to enjoy their life. I very much believe that people should have fair working conditions, but they should also be allowed the time for rest and relaxation as well. And although I appreciate this is a small, very small part of what forms holidays under this Act, I do think it's worth protecting in this instance, and not for the religious reasons that may cause some other members to oppose this bill. This is very much on the basis of protecting the rights of workers to be able to enjoy that time off and to not put additional pressure on them to work. And I appreciate the member did engage specifically with me on that issue, and my colleague Rachel Boyack has worked extensively in unions that work with supermarkets and has experience in that, and so we'll be talking to that specific point. So appreciate that those examples were specifically sought, and Rachel Boyack will be able to speak to that. So this is not from our perspective to do with the religious nature of Easter. We do note that Easter goes over 4 days, and we are talking about 2 of those days of restrictions. So in terms of the balance of being able to trade, on an objective basis, that seems, from our perspective, to be about right. Personally, I come from a family that has been religious in the past. I'm not religious myself. My objection to this is not on the basis of wanting to practice my own religion on those days, although I would note that many secular families do celebrate Easter and do celebrate other religious holidays as tradition as well, and those traditions can be held very dear despite the lack of religious adherence to it. So I'm sorry to the member that our party will not be able to support his bill. In the sense, I do believe that for him it's a genuinely passionately held belief that this law should be changed. But for us also it was in the context of looking at the other measures that have been brought in, not by the member himself, but by members of his party that, in our view, do take away from the rights of workers. And quite ironically, I suppose, in the very week or fortnight that this bill was coming up for hearing, we have heard the Minister from the Members' Party talk about a review of the Holidays Act, and I have not heard, and I would like to hear assurances from the Minister that that won't result in a loss of entitlements for people. And I think that's essentially the main grain of our opposition to this bill, is we don't want to see further rights of workers go backwards. We do know that this is a small, discrete area, but we do not think the flexibility of businesses are so significantly curtailed by these existing restrictions that this needs to be changed at this stage. And it is, I think, relevant, Mr. Speaker, to look at the wider context of what is happening at the moment. And we have even seen yesterday the minimum wage be raised be set at the smallest amount since the 1990s. So this is not a government that is, in our view, delivering for workers, and it's in that context that we also don't want to see any rollback further of the rights that workers enjoy to their time off with their family. And I think we're all thinking about time off with our families as we get ready for the holiday break now, and how precious that is to us. And so although this is a small part of that, for us it is something small that we're willing to fight for, and that is the basis of the Labour Party's opposition to this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Now, just for those who are wondering what happens on Easter, so I do this every year, Easter egg lattes, since we're on the topic of Easter. So as you can see there, that's basically cracking the lids off and all that. That was me at the Fox.
Who's that handsome fella?
Oh, it's me. That's the number of boxes of Easter eggs I get, and this is from the Capity Chocolate Factory. And so this is something I absolutely love about Easter, is that, you know, the one time you can sit there and have this celebratory product out there like an Easter egg latte. And last year was the first that we tried of selling white chocolate Easter eggs, and it was quite amazing how many people wanted the white ones, because it was kind of a guessing game of will they sell or will they not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you know, that is something I do, and because of the fact that Easter is restricted, you have things like the Titahi Bay Easter Fair, you have the Foxton Easter Fair. You have these events that revolve around Easter that gets the event sector going. And if you tinker around with those rules and have any Tom, Dick and Harry open, they may not sit there and say, take the drive out to Foxton to sit there and see the windmill and see the Easter Fair and see different towns and create traffic chaos on the road.
Wouldn't it be a holiday without traffic chaos? Come on.
I don't think so. I mean, I had to put up with that driving to Vinegar Hill on Friday, and it was like literally as soon as you got north of Otaki, it was literally mild holiday chaos traffic that I was very tempted to contemplate to drive up State Highway 57 and State Highway 54 to get there instead of up State Highway 1. I was contemplating it, and I've still got to decide what I'm going to do on Christmas Day when the coffee cart goes up, because I've got to watch which way I drive, and I've got to find somewhere to fill it up with water. But do I want to, you know, the closest place is Fielding, but I have to go over Free Hills. So yeah, something that was a bit completely off topic, but shows actually what happens with Easter, and I think Camilla really put it right nicely. And the next speech up there, ironically, is where the Foxton Easter Fair happens.
Oh, okay.
And Tim Costley's electorate. So yeah, let's see what Tim Costley says, because I don't think he's actually appeared having a speech on the show before.
First time for everything.
In favour of this bill. I don't know that I naturally feel in support of it, but I do think there are some genuine questions to be answered. And I want to see the bill go to Select Committee so that these can be teased out, and to give a broader number of people the opportunity to appear before the Select Committee, to make submissions. And I want to see people with the opportunity to come and appear before them and actually present their case. Because Look, my starting point is I like what the current rules achieve. I like that we have just a couple of days in New Zealand where families have an almost unobstructed opportunity to get together. It might not be the right mechanism, that government has to tell you that today you can't go to work and today you should spend time with your family, but I do think it's the right outcome, particularly because I feel like we've seen a gradual breakdown of community and in some levels of family in New Zealand, and I'd like to see more of that, and I do like what these rules achieve, but I do think there are questions that we need to answer. For example, the tension between the public holiday being on the Sunday but the day of no trading being, the public holiday being on the Monday and the no trading being on the Sunday. And what this means is even if workers, yes, it is true, they have their rights protected and under this member's bill that would also apply to Good Friday, but they don't have the backup of it being a public holiday, so if they do work they get time and a half, or they get a day in lieu. They have those other provisions in place, and it does feel a little bit messy to me to have a public holiday Monday but the trading days on other days. I hear the call from the other side that they want to ensure people have the freedom not to work. I know it's never quite that simple, that everyone feels they're in a position to say no, but I do think this is an issue worth teasing out. Now, of course, one of the questions is, well, what's left? That leaves us with Anzac Day morning, that leaves us with Christmas Day, and no one's suggesting we should touch Christmas. But the question might be, well, why not? What is the difference between Christmas and Easter? They both come from a faith perspective. They have both traditionally been days on which, if you look at the tikanga on which the modern New Zealand was founded, they were important days in the calendar, days where families came together, days where we didn't trade. Now, when we went to Sunday trading some decades ago, obviously the protections for Sundays remained in place, and no one said we would take on Christmas. But if the position of those in favour of the bill is, well, everyone should be free to choose whatever day they want, why wouldn't the same apply to Christmas? Now, not for 1 minute am I advocating that this should apply to Christmas, but why are we drawing a line there? Because the argument there would fall flat on itself. On the one hand, we're saying, well, everyone should be free to choose, and if you want to work, if you want to open your business, you can. But then we're also saying at the same time, but not on Christmas, because we decided that day is too important. So actually we do think it's okay that government sometimes will say, well, there are days that are so important, we're not going to touch them. We're not going to touch the morning of Anzac Day. We're not going to touch Christmas Day. But why not Easter? I think there's a genuine question here, and I'm sure the member in his reply will do it. But I'm happy to see this bill go to the Select Committee to tease out some of these questions. I don't think in its current form the bill answers all of these, but I do think it's a question that more New Zealanders should be able to comment on as we just ultimately decide the kind of country that we want to be living in. Look, from where I sit, it seems madness that when I went out with my family for dinner, Good Friday this year, and we said, well, let's go to this one place, let's get some garlic bread and have a drink. Sorry, garlic bread's not enough to get a drink. Well, what if we have 2 garlic breads? Is that okay? Oh, not quite. Maybe if you had some fries as well. Okay, so we went to the other place and we just had an earlier dinner. Now, I don't think that's right. I don't think that can be the answer that we want to end up on. If the bar is open, then let them do what they do. If people want to have a meal, let them have a meal. If they want to have a drink, let them have a drink. If you really are worried about the length of that, you can look at earlier closing rates, but that should be determined at a local level. So I do think there are some issues with the way it sits now. But I also want to see those couple of rare days we have in this country that are protected, that kind of drive to a great outcome of families together. And I hold Christmas Day and Easter Sunday as being 2 really special days, along with Anzac Day for me, that I would like to see some protection around. But I think the alignment of the rules on trading, the rules on alcohol sale, the public holidays need to be looked at. Now, no one is saying, well, let's have an extra public holiday, because they don't want to suddenly take away the Monday day off. And why not? Well, because we want a day off. But actually, that's what we're getting rid of here. So I think there are some questions. I'm going to support this bill to Select Committee to give people a chance to comment on those, and then I'll reassess from there. Thank you.
And I think Tim Costley needs to actually realise that in his own electorate in the town of Levin, the Levin Cossey Club doesn't have that restrictions with their special licence on Good Friday and Easter Sunday, because they get a special licence they can drink to the hilt.
I like what Dave X proposed. Just make it stat. Make it a stat holiday.
In Australia, I believe it's treated as a 4-day stat, but I mean, put it this way: in Australia, the reward system actually allows you to what's it called? It's time and a half on Saturday and double time on Sunday is standard anyway, which we don't have anymore. But that would be, that might be the approach that's needed.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's yeah. Tiana Tuiono?
Yep.
Sure.
Right across the House and of course with different members of Parliament within the Green Party, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing for members to be engaging on things that they're passionate about, and that has resonated in the interactions that the member has had with the people that I have talked to as well. And I hope that can continue, whether people agree or disagree. And unfortunately, in this case, I disagree. And the reasons for that is we need to really focus on getting that work-life balance right. And so it is important for us to uphold workers' rights. That's important, to secure an adequate income, to fair treatment and safety at work, and to be involved in workplace decision-making via workplace democracy and collective organising. That stuff is important. But at the same time, must foster a working culture which recognises the fullness of people's lives and restores balance between paid work, voluntary and care work and leisure time. And I we don't have that balance within our society. Too much of our time, as the member said previously, is being spent on devices and other issues as well, that we actually need to carve out that time. And so I take a different view because, and this is not for religious reasons, but there are so few days there where it should be about family, or it should be about community, which should be about society, that it would be unfortunate if this Parliament were to roll those back. Mr Speaker, I note that in the discussions that we've had so far, that the member talked about that there is the right for workers to refuse to work on that day, and he went to some lengths to explain the extension of those rights within his members' bill. However, anybody that's worked, anybody that's had particularly low-paid jobs will know that you don't want to get on the wrong side of the boss. There are these other pressures that play into place. Yes, you might have the ability to do something, to tell your boss, but who in reality would do that? There is a power imbalance which is not addressed in this bill, and so I have concerns about that. And I guess the issues that the member raises around one about extensions into other religious holidays, of other cultural events of significance, are important conversations to have. And I hope that the member will continue to have those conversations, because it's important to be able to have those conversations, but I can't see how that is addressed with this bill. And I also agree with the point around the seeming advantages that online businesses have to bricks and mortar. I think that is also an important issue that needs to be addressed by the Parliament, but I also can't see that being addressed in particular with this bill. So I do want to encourage the member to continue to engage in good faith. I think he has done that, but I also see all of this within the context of what's been happening in the realm of workers' rights. We've had there's been attempts to rein back the ability to strike. In the beginning of this Parliament, we had 90-day trials come back, fair pay agreements rolled back as well. Workers are under attack. Workers are feeling that this government doesn't care about them. If we talk about the freedom to choose and the freedom to choose in terms of how you will work or not work within a particular workplace, it is also important to think about the freedom to organise, the freedom to not just choose who will have power over you, because that's the problem, but also the freedom to actually own and organise our own lives. This is a bill which is happening in the context where workers' rights are being rolled back, Mr Speaker. And it is in that context why I cannot support this bill.
Okay. Sounds very Tiana Tuiono. Pro-workers' rights?
Like I said before, the logic is there, but when you combine it with the other bills that have been revoked or repealed, or all this stuff, all these other worker protections, it's you know, they're not upholding a worker's right to refuse to work on a bloody holiday, and that really needs to be a thing if it's not already. But yes, this bill could be abused, and there's very little safeguards in place. And I've got a problem with that, and because of that problem, I can't agree with this bill because of all the other supporting bills that are going with it.
Yeah, Stacey?
Yeah, like on the surface, it's a good idea, yes, but yeah, you're like Laura said, that and Tiano said, you need to ensure that workers' rights are going to be
trampled on,
upheld.
Yeah. Now, with this is an interesting one here, where there's a split call between David Seymour and Hannah Rafferty Maipi Clark. So let's see how this goes.
This bill. Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Honourable David Seymour.
Mr Speaker, with your leave, I would like to make a very short contribution and split my time with Te Pāti Māori in order that they can speak, having not been at the beginning of the debate, but wishing to speak, if that's okay with you.
That's fine. Very magnanimous. Thank you.
Well, it is Christmas, Mr Speaker, and all people in the spirit of Christ deserve forgiveness from time to time. Mr Speaker, can I begin my speech time from now? Mr Speaker, I rise on behalf of myself, the people of Epsom, the ACT Party, in support of this bill. And the one thing I wanted to say to people of a Christian faith, that this is in no way an offence, an insult or a slight. Mr Speaker, I myself, a baptised Presbyterian and someone who believes deeply in the roots of Imago Dei, because they tell us that each person has an inherent dignity being made in the image of God. That is the foundation of my beliefs, and it is the foundation of our Western society based on liberalism and each person having equal rights. But it also applies to each person who may not have faith and may have different views from yours. It applies to people who have a whole range of aspirations. And sometimes those aspirations are grand and profound, like becoming an astronaut or bringing about world peace. But other times, the things that people really want are just to be able to conveniently buy what they need or want at a time that is convenient for them.
And I actually don't think that if you believe in freedom and the dignity and rights of people to choose for themselves, that you should discriminate between those large and small wants. And the next question you should ask is, regardless, what harm does it do to allow a person to go to a shop which is allowed to be open anyway? You know, we hear that it's terrible for the employees to go to a shop that's allowed to be open anyway, such as a supermarket, and often is open anyway, and be able to buy a bottle of wine to share with their loved ones. People say, oh, you should just get organised earlier. But why? There is no justification for restricting another person's freedom to transact with someone else that wants to be here, that wants to do it. They still get time and a half because it doesn't change the Holidays Act. They still don't have to work because of the Shop Trading Hours Act, but they can work. They can choose to if they want to. And really, Mr. Speaker, I find it astonishing that we're even debating something as simple and straightforward as this. Should we allow another person to pursue their dreams and hopes if it does not affect ours? Mr. Speaker, the answer is we should send this bill to Select Committee so people can do precisely that.
Mr. Speaker.
Hannah Rafferty, Maipi Clark.
Tēnā rā koe e te pika o te rā tēnā rā tātou. E te whare, I just want to mihi to the member and also in his party reaching out with their different stuff on this certain bill, and also just want to provide a bit of clarification that with only 5 members in our party, it's pretty hard to get over the Select Committee process and this at the same time. That's why we're running around. This bill would allow businesses to sell alcohol on Good Friday and Easter Sunday. It would also allow workers to refuse to work without justification on Good Friday and Easter Sunday. There are some good reasons to support this bill. Firstly, this would remove privilege that one religion has over other religions in Aotearoa. Currently, a Christian holiday can dictate a restriction on selling alcohol, but other cultures and belief systems are not afforded that same opportunity. Matariki, for example, the penalty for not complying with restricted trading laws is a fine of $1,000. This means that some large businesses are able to pay the fine and sell alcohol anyways. This is unfair to small businesses. I also agree that people should be allowed to refuse to work without justification on Good Friday, but I also think that this right should be extended to all religions and cultural holidays. While I support certain aspects of this bill, in our Te Pāti Māori value system, I cannot in good conscience vote in favour of increasing access to alcohol while it continues to harm our people. Māori suffer disproportionately from alcohol-related over 1/3. 37% of Māori men were classified as hazardous drinkers compared to 29% of European men. Between 2012 and 2016, the percentage of Māori women who were considered hazardous drinkers increased 21% to 29%. Allowing the sale of alcohol on Good Friday and Easter Sunday will encourage drinking and worsen alcohol-related harm. The government needs to restrict alcohol advertising, increase funding for alcohol harm reduction strategies before I can support a bill that increases to alcohol. Tēnā rā koe te whare.
Well, I think that was good to see that
Brent can share.
Yeah, that it was the ACT party to give Te Pāti Māori the say.
Good. Now, this is a conscious vote, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, too bad he couldn't apply that to, I don't know, the Treaty Principles Bill. That would have been wonderful.
Oh, yes.
But anyways, I don't know what he goes on about when he goes about dreams and aspirations. I'm like, dude, it's working on Easter Sunday. What are you talking about? Who has dreams and aspirations of serving alcohol on Easter Sunday?
Not alcohol, but I have dreams of making money on Easter Sunday.
I was going to say, people who need more money.
Yeah.
True.
But put it this way, I am the business owner. I'm not the employee. Yeah. And it's like, put it this way, I'm of the opinion that you've got to put in the hard work to actually sit there and do it. You don't just sit down there and actually just jump in on Easter.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, I have dreams and aspirations of stronger workers' rights and dreams and aspirations of workers owning the means of production. There is a reason why I'm wearing a socialist hat. But I want workers to get paid more. You're going to work on a holiday? Get paid for it.
Okay, now let's get to an interesting part here. The voting procedure.
Yes.
Because we've never covered the conscience vote before. So let's kick it off.
Really? I've determined that the subject of this vote will be treated as a conscience issue. In this case, I know there are members who want a personal vote, and I am prepared to accept one. This is the process we're going to follow. I'm going to put the question, I'm going to announce the result. At this stage, any member can ask for a personal vote. The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. A personal vote is called for. A personal vote will be held. Ring the bells. The ayes will cast their vote in the lobby to the right. The noes will cast their vote in the lobby to the left. Abstentions will be recorded at the table. All votes... can I just keep the noise down, please, members? All votes and abstentions will be recorded by the clerk. Proxy votes will be marked as such.
Were the members even making noise when he told them to keep it down?
So now let's really zoom this up.
Wow.
Come on, chop, 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 chop.
Now, I think it's about here. There's a thing called lock the doors. Yeah, it's so funny, like how the things go with a personal vote.
It looks like stop motion. It's so good.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, hold on.
Gotta slow it down.
Yeah, no, and then it's go back. What is it? Okay, let's go here.
Jeez, you sped up the footage and yet they're walking so slowly.
God, that music sounds weird on fast speed. So here's another mention that comes up.
Lock the doors.
Lock the doors.
Yep. So now the MPs who
The question
originally
is that the
vote.
motion be agreed to.
Okay, so the clerks are now counting up the votes. So what happens in that case is you lock the doors, so those who haven't gotten in time to actually get to the vote are now meant to be not able to leave the premises.
They're forced to listen to music.
But the music in Fast Forward was so good as well.
So, for the doors that are meant to be locked, they're walking through like...
No, they're not. The doors are locked. They're just phasing through.
We were talking about this before we started. And Sam said lock the doors, and I went, oh, they're electing a new pope?
Unless there's a different set of doors they lock.
I'm guessing it would be the side doors where the counting's being done.
Yeah, no, but it's meant to be all the doors into the chamber.
Ah.
Yeah, I'm looking. I'm
in
watching
New
the back
Zealand,
door.
like in New Zealand, we have 6 doors.
Look at the back door. There's people swinging it out.
We have 5 doors into the parliament. In the UK, they only have 2 doors.
All right.
Yeah. In Australia, when they do a division, you just walk to the side of the house you vote on. You don't even go into the eyes and nose lobby.
Yeah. Did Seymour mention Opus Dei earlier? That's a really good question. I did not catch that if he did.
Yeah. Just wondering who Greg's speaking to. Yeah, because the Sergeant Arms hasn't gone back to the speaker yet, because the Sergeant Arms is the one who says to unlock the doors.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, so to give you an example of the dumb things that my brain does, before, Sam, when you said there's only 5 doors, there are 5 doors in New Zealand, I went, in all the country? Oh, wow. Like, knowing that obviously fucking no.
You see what I've got behind me? That's just a giant window. Not even a door.
Oh no, I know. It's just painted, so you can't see through it. Yeah. No, I know that this is.
I'm going to have to ask Greg what the hell happened here, because he's the one in the chair. Like, when you said lock the doors, and we're watching this on fast forward, and people go in and out the doors. So which doors were locked?
My parliament has more doors than your parliament.
JC, you got me ugly laughing. Good job.
I mean, also this one, they didn't appoint tellers. Normally they appoint tellers to count.
Hey, this is kind of funky.
More often than sometimes. Told you, my brain does dumb things.
Oh! Okay, Clark's got out of his seat, back into his seat. I don't know who the hell's Greg talking to at there, but I ain't the Sergeant of Arms.
Why does it feel like there's more people in there now?
Someone's just walked out. Oh, no, Clark's back. 3 Clarks have turned up.
When it's the stage, we've just got the clerks will just compare notes and make sure they have the correct voting, and we will then declare the results.
More music.
And then we'll just wait to see. Oh, there we are. Oh, and I think
he left as quickly as he came in.
Are we actually going to watch something at normal speed, Sam?
I think I'm about to say something.
If his ADHD allows for it.
It's a bit important. It's personal spot.
We are ready to resume. The ayes are 49, the noes are 74, there are no abstentions. The question is not agreed.
Hey,
Unlock the doors. Unlock the doors. The House is adjourned until 2 p.m.
So that's a bit about what you can see what happens in a personal vote. However, I'm still questioning, were the doors locked?
No.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Well, he said lock the doors. He didn't say lock the windows. Maybe we're just looking at giant windows.
Or maybe they were parasailing down from the public gallery.
Exactly. It's like that thing behind Laura. It's just a window.
It's just a giant window.
Yeah. Look, your window's got an extra window.
Yeah. Window within a window. Windowception.
That's the one.
Okay, so we've got our first person who is joining us and who has been eagerly sitting there for about 10 minutes.
We're
yes,
watching people motion.
Yeah. So, friend and panelist of the show, Blake, welcome.
Hello,
Hey.
Sam. I actually enjoyed listening to that.
Watching how they go around to do voting. You know, that took 25 minutes.
I know.
Like, we managed to compress it down to about 7 or 8. But, that was just like, what the hell?
I watched it live. So for me.
Oh, yes. So if there's anyone else who wants to jump in, just click on our restream link here. And, sit down there and jump in, and you can join in just like Blake has, which I know Blake jumped in very quickly, but that's because he's got a he's got a current restream account. So, Blake, the thing is, what would you like to see happen in the was it Parliament sitting year 2025? You've got 2 minutes.
Yeah, I Well, I'll give you a bit of a heads up. I'll be doing a bit on disability, so that's what I'll be working on. But I hope they revisit this bill that they just declined in some capacity, because I'm actually in favour of a bill like this if it's done correctly. Because the reason why is if people like support workers, and that should be essential services, so should stuff like supermarkets, in my view, and there should be enough employees to cover those, even if they bring them in on a part-time basis, like you have the warehouse hiring extra people for Christmas. So, I think there should be some element of that. I don't know if anyone wishes to reply, but that's my view on the Easter bill. And for the fast track, I reckon it is useful for stuff like housing and stadiums. And
stadiums can be a bit questionable, but housing, yes, I agree with you on housing, as long as it doesn't end up in a floodplain.
Especially, again, for accessibility purposes. Feel free to reply if you wish.
Well, I agree. I agree about the alcohol. We need lots of alcohol with this government. With fast track, yeah, sure. I don't. When it comes to the fast track bill, there are parts of it that could work and could be done ethically. Like you said, to fast track things like disability access to things like houses and stuff like that. Yeah, sure. Absolutely, we should have legislation for that. Small stuff.
One of the things that does come a bit of an issue with, as you mentioned on there about the supermarkets, say, hiring, say, Christmas worker style approach, liquor licenses come very interesting on there, because you actually have to be properly trained. In order to obtain a manager's license, you do actually have to actively be working in the sector.
Yep.
So, yeah. But yeah. I mean, also the other thing is, a supermarket could apply for a special license. When I did work for Bruce Flavin, this is going back at 2011. Was it 11 or no? 2012 Easter Fair at ASB Showgrounds. He got a special license so he could trade for the 5-day event. But basically, it was on the Easter days. We were one of the few places that you could actually get in Auckland. You get off-license sales on those 2 non-alcohol days, because basically, so that is the other thing is with the alcohol part is, are you changing that piece of rule or not? As like Tim Costley sat there and said, they had an issue with trying to sit there and, is garlic bread enough to have a drink at a bar? Well, in his own electorate, you've got Levin Cosy Club that you can sit there and drink to your heart's content, and has been doing that every Easter forever.
All I was saying closing is that, I just think, and I agree with some of the right-wing members for once, that there should be a bit more freedom of choice.
I also think the fine should be more proportionate to the actual size of the business. Because $1,000 is pocket change for a supermarket.
Aggressive fines.
Yeah, maybe that's something that could be looked at.
But anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Thanks, Sam.
So actually, you can sit there and I want to ask you this. What happens with support working for you over that period? Does that go into a very funny area?
Oh, yeah. But it's very patchy, especially now under this current government with their disability legislation. It's very interesting.
Which actually might say, Blake, sorry, but on Good Friday, you're not leaving bed.
Not that I leave bed at the moment on a Friday anyway, because I'm still waiting on a foot operation, and I have to rest at least 3 days a week. But yeah, technically, yes, you're correct.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, well, thanks for joining, Blake. And we haven't got anyone else to join in. No one from the audience has joined in. They're probably freaked out when it came to setting up the Restream account. or they're probably a bit scared about jumping in. I mean, I do know under the BHN Discord server, I think, they've all left now, but there was a string of people in their BHN live chat during the show.
Ah.
Yeah, and we can't get Paul in because I think he's in Kafia.
Yeah, he's at the match.
Where's Dr. Eric?
Yeah, I know.
He's always wanting to come on, so it's like, yeah, come on, man, this is your chance.
On the show, it doesn't mean he watches it.
No, that's true. That's
Like,
true.
I need to summon Dr. Eric so I can debate him.
Yeah, the cell phone's basically old and had it, so it doesn't even ring half the time. Yeah, he needs a new cell phone. I think he's still using a Samsung Galaxy S3.
That's an old phone.
Yeah, like that's how old it is or something. Yeah. Yeah, and it's something like it's like got garbage battery and all sorts.
Oh dear.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, we'll let you go and you can get back to the audience.
Okay. See you soon. Thanks.
See you later. Okay. Well, one thing I would like to sit there and say is for 2025, I do hope the government does not use urgency so often.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because anyone knows me, when urgency says bad laws.
I want more conscious voting with this government.
Yeah, I doubt that it's going to happen, but yes, I do like the idea of that. Yes, Stacey, what would you like to happen in the next sitting year of Parliament?
Well, unfortunately, what I want to happen ain't going to happen, so I would like a whole new government altogether, please.
Sorry, I don't think you're going to have a choice. I think Election Day is going to be Saturday, the 28th of November, 2026.
November? That's very late in the year.
Ah, but it's the last date you can hold an election on, and I think that will be the date that Luxon will choose because the Electoral Commission will not greenlight a date in December. I do like what Dave sits here and says here about urgency and a sick person with a toilet.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
I also agree with what Kiwi Skirt says.
Oh, sorry.
Gone.
It was when all of us go for the same thing.
Yeah. But, yeah.
Oh, and I agree with what Paulson there is saying there about the conscious vote on the Treaty Principles Bill referendum. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, that's what I want that to just be thrown in the fucking bin. Get rid of it.
You've done your submission yet?
I found a fantastic fucking video the other day. Maybe yesterday. So, I can't remember the name of the document.
Oh, okay.
But it was signed by the tribal heads, not necessarily the chiefs, but the tribal heads in 1835, and is the document that allows Te Tiriti and the government to exist.
Oh.
And it specifically states that bloody hell, Laura. It specifically states that any non-Māori government set up within the country is not allowed to screw with that document. Screwing with Te Tiriti screws with that document, and it's talking about Kāwanatanga, which is translated to sovereignty.
I'm still yet to work on my submission. My idea is to go over the historical writings that my own ancestor left behind, but his thoughts on it. So I descend from Iwiko. He's one of the signatories on Te Tiriti, and I'm gonna include in my submission how he viewed relationships with Pākehā, because he was very much in favour of co-governance. He had a very good working relation with the French at Akaroa.
God, I do like your new name.
Yep.
And Laura, what would you like to see for 2025 in Parliament?
I mean, I'm David Seymour's #1 fan, so I want to see more of David Seymour so I can scream at my computer for 2 hours every Sunday. I also want to see more meme-worthy moments. Guys, you got to work on those memes, and so I can illustrate them all. And also, I also want to see way more conscious voting, because that was good. I like conscious voting because you get to see what everyone thinks.
Yeah, exactly. That is so true. Yeah.
Paul, no. No, what? No. No.
Funny. I wish I knew. Yes, thank you, JC. That's why I threw it up on screen before. That one.
Oh, that's good.
Yes.
Yep. Declaration of Independence. Yeah, that's an important doc.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like, I wish I knew what my signing ancestor knew, thought about such things.
Try checking on who's your ancestor. Did they sign Te Tiriti?
Yes, Te Wainohi.
Right, so you might be able to go on archives.co.nz. Because I remember the Marine customary titles where I was shouting at that guy who said that Tupuna didn't preserve any records. Well, they did, and they're on archives.co.nz.
Right. I don't know if we have anything like that documented. But considering that Te Wai married James Werser heavily, I would imagine that there would be things written down and recorded somewhere. But yeah, that's research I'm going to have to do in my own time.
Yeah, I mean, the rangatira,
yeah,
they saw the value in writing pretty early on. They saw the value that it was another form of record keeping and it was a way of communicating with Pākehā. So this idea that they're just a bunch of Stone Age idiots. They didn't write anything. Well, they may not have written themselves, but they saw the value in writing and got someone to write for them.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, well, now let's have a quick show of the sitting calendar for next year. As you can see, we're in December. We can now go beyond December. January. And they return back the
Closer
day
to Election Day. Let's go.
Auckland Anniversary Day. February. Well, we know where they're meant to be on this day because it's Waitangi. March. April. And you can guess what happens in this period of time? Easter and Anzac Day.
Oh, they get to have a day off. That's nice.
Yeah. Oh, it's school holidays as well, and there's convention that Parliament takes school holidays off. May, June, and I think one of these weeks is Scrutiny Week as well. July. Don't know where the school holidays are that year. August. September. October. November. December. So yes, that you can sit there and see what is going to be the sitting calendar for 2025.
It's the big chonker.
Oh, well, they have more sitting days than they did last Parliament.
Yes.
Because last Parliament they sat there and had 7 weeks without any, with virtually no one sitting. Yeah. And then, funny enough, they were in urgency that, like, literally around the whole incident. Yeah. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting year for next year. 2025 local body elections.
Oh, yes, that will be fun. Please come to the Tararua region.
Oh, I'm very sure we can.
I love watching soft sits.
Woo, hi.
Try to run for council. It's always good fun.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I can't have the bourbon.
Yeah. And no one else seems to want to jump in, or they probably get stuck at the restream thing, or they're not. Who knows?
Hold on, I see a +3. No, that's just how many of us are here. I'm having a moment. Shush. I told you my brain does dumb things.
I mean, we could always do this to say that we have more people. Where do I find extra camera? Let's.
Or we could call it a slightly early night. We're only 5 minutes out.
I can't actually add my own camera to be a second camera.
Yeah.
God, that was like at least I tried that. Yeah, no, we have done that. Yeah. What was the highlights of 2025? 2024. We haven't had 2025 yet. We haven't got a crystal ball. Tauranga Mayoralty, was that a good race?
Lots of fun. I have a weird sense of fun.
Hold on. What? Sorry. What? We just did Tauranga. What did I miss?
The Mirror Race show. That was probably one of our best shows.
All right. Yes. I quite enjoyed the Māori Award show as well.
Oh, I think someone is trying to work out which one. If you want to, yeah, I think it's JC and the Pigeon Cats. Yeah, let's see if JC and the Pigeon Cats actually ends up getting through there. It's restream, but it's more of the broadcasting software got to connect in. Because I haven't got Discord parts sorted to sit there and make that work, I leave that for Stacey, because Stacey knows Discord better.
Stacey doesn't know Discord. I just pretend like I do.
Oh, you know better than me. You know, Jeremy, there's a link in your Facebook chat asking you to join in on the stream. Oh.
Oh, jeez. That's amazing. How you are running 2 cameras?
Yep. And I've just booted out the second camera. Laura's computer is just like kind of like hit the
I think Laura just broke the computer.
Yeah, I think we've got an issue with the sound.
You're not muted, so I don't know what's going on.
I think you did put your microphone, Laura. Oh, who knows? Yeah. Oh, heck. There's a bit on there.
Alright. Do we have Laura back?
Visually, yes. Audio, I don't think so. Visually, yes. Not but audio.
Right.
Yeah. So what's happening for your Christmas that you publicly want to know while we still can't hear from Laura?
What's that? What am I doing for Christmas?
Yes.
I'm going to my mum's for the afternoon.
Oh, this is a good question from Mr. Alex.
Can the government legislate nuisance streamers who try to copy the personality called Johnny Somali? Oh. Well, for a start,
potentially.
Name.
Potentially they could. Doesn't sit there, you know, there's all sorts of interesting things you can potentially legislate for. But, I mean, you know, can it work? Like, can you legislate your property manager to be a decent human being? You know, heard that from Greg O'Connor. That was not always achievable.
Golly. Pardon me. It could be the same sort of thing as like stalking laws or fraud.
I don't know. Yeah, no, I think the guy's known as being a prankster.
Right.
But not pranking on not necessarily willing participants.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I think we should call it a night.
Right. Oh, are we going to throw in the open submissions?
Oh, yes. Yes, we forgot something. There's a lot of them. Oh, and before you sit there and do that, actually, just to let you know, if you want to go to Moshams and give me some work, you can order for tomorrow delivery right up till 6 a.m. in the morning. So we can sit there and do that. I like that. Now, the first bill, Treaty Principles Bill. Make sure you get your submissions in. The Aoranga Tamariki Serious Offending Bill to bring back physical force. I now wonder if Jeremy's going to turn up. He has just read the message. Oh, I do have quite a few. Funny enough, guess who's just turned up? However, we'll do the submissions on the bill. Then we'll get Jeremy's 2 minutes of fun. So the Social Security Amendment Bill, that is to bring in payment cards and benefit sanctions. The Disputes Tribunal Amendment Bill to raise the threshold from $30,000 to $60,000. So if you have a problem with your Tesla, you can actually take it to the Disputes Tribunal and see the district court to resolve your problems.
Only certain models, though, remember.
Yeah, the Crime Counterfeiting Foreign Interference Amendment Bill. The Racing Industries Amendment Bill. The Employment Relations Employees Disclosure Amendment Bill. The Victims of Sexual Violence Strengthening Legal Protections Legislation Amendment Bill. And the International Treaty Examinations of Climate Change Agreement, Trade, and I can't remember what else bill. So they're due to come in the next month. Stacey's putting those links in the chat. So we managed to cram someone else to ring in live, Jeremy.
Yes, hello.
Is Laura's microphone still working, or is it still hijacked?
It's working. Can you hear me?
Oh, we can hear you.
Oh, good. Oh, sorry, you're asking Laura about her microphone.
Yeah. So what would you like to see change for in 2025 for in Parliament? What changes? What would you like to see happen?
Well, gosh, it's probably very unlikely, but 2 words: scam election.
No, sorry. I think the election date's going to be Saturday, the 28th of November, 2026.
Hey, how do you know that date?
Because it's the last possible date they can call the election on.
Oh, that well, the Governor-General has stated.
And it's approximately 3 years from when the government was formed.
Oh, that's law.
No, it's not quite law. I mean, it can be called earlier, but that's the last date they can call in 2026. And I think Luxon will drag it out as long as possible, unless he is in a very, very difficult situation.
Yes,
I don't think he's going to call an early election.
Yes, like for example, if he's being held back by Davis Seymour, who at that time will be the Deputy Prime Minister.
Yeah. Well, this will be the interesting thing that will happen, but I don't think he's going to call it. He's going to do it until literally the last minute.
Yes. Yeah. No, probably not.
Yeah, so yes, you'd love a snap election to be called next year, which I don't think it's going to happen.
But yeah, as you can probably tell, I'm just showing my political bias there.
Yeah. Oh, let's call it a show. We'll hit the closing credits and then we'll show chats.
Funny, you were scared it said Riverbrook Laura.
Yeah, I know. I hope Laura's microphone starts working soon. Yeah,
yes,
so,
indeed.
We will post an announcement when we bring a show. We're not sure whether we're to have a summer series going over legislation that we did not cover.
Okay.
So that's something we'll do. It won't be happening at Vinegar Hill, I can tell you that, because I'm not taking my broadcasting computer up there. I'm already taking enough valuable equipment. I don't need to take this up there as well.
Yes, indeed.
I could live stream from there. I mean, I do own a Starlink, and it just got properly set up today, and I gave Elon Musk $222.
Far too much money to owe that man.
Yeah. So is that just for 1 month or for the setup?
Yes, 1 month roam, 1 month unlimited roam. With what was it called? With the thing that you can move around the country.
Oh right. Yeah. My dad's got one of those.
It's not a fixed addressing. Yeah. So yes, we'll hit closing credits, and we will see you guys next year.
Okay, see you
Thank
next
you for
time.
watching The Order Paper, your express ticket to the New Zealand House of Representatives. Every episode, we unravel the complex world of legislation, debate, and democracy. From bills to select committees, we've got it all covered. From our team of political commentators who will dissect and explain what's happened, so you can remain up to date on what's happened in the Aotearoa, New Zealand Parliament. To support our channel, you can become a Patreon member at patreon.com/it'sintheballot. The Order Paper podcast is brought to you by It's in the Ballot.